All right, we continue on. Java is a object-oriented programming language, that is an OOP language, and all code in Java is inside of a class. So this was one of the key features when Java first came out, is everything had to be inside of a class. All Java classes actually inherit from java.lang.Object. So this java.lang.Object is the root of the class hierarchy. It's always at the very top. So no matter what class you write, it will always inherit from, that is, it will pick up the features of java.lang.Object. Now we can use the new Java keyword to create an instance of a class. So remember, a class is like a blueprint, and the instance is when you turn that into something real. So by saying new, and notice at line 24, we say java.lang.Object is create a new java.lang.Object. Now keep in mind, java.lang, that package, is part of the language itself, is included as part of the language. So you don't really have to fully type it in. In fact, at line 28, I do the shorthand, which you're probably much more used to seeing. But for right now, I wanted to make it clear that at line 24, the object is coming from java.lang. So we create a new instance of that, and notice at line 25, we print out that object. One of the things to observe at line 25, we call the method toString on that object. And then at line 26, it turns out when a print statement is done, it calls toString automatically. So again, at 25, I wanted to specifically show I was calling toString, but in actual fact, at line 26, it does it for you automatically. The compiler does that for you. In any case, we see as the output that the default output for a toString is it gives the name of the class, so in this case, java.lang.Object, and notice it gives the fully qualified name, that is, it shows the package as well as the name of the class. And then the @ sign shows the, essentially think of that as the address inside the virtual machine. So it's the address, the reference of where that object is at. So we do that for one object, obj1, and we do it again for obj2, just to show we've created two different instances of objects. And you can see in the output, obj1 and obj2, although they are both of the same class, that is java.lang.Object, you can see they're at different locations in memory. That is, one has @ with one address and the other one has @ at the other address. So the same class, but two different instances. Now to repeat, when you create a new class, it inherits from java.lang.Object. So to demonstrate this, let's create a new class called employee. And notice we will create a new file, employee.java, and we will then put in that file public class employee. Now remember, employee inherits from the object. Even though you don't show it here, it actually inherits from class object. Now we'll go ahead and put a default constructor. So by saying employee, we have a default constructor, and all we'll do in this case is just say system.out.println to see that the default constructor was called. That is, this is when you create an instance of it, this is how it takes the opportunity to do whatever it needs to do to initialize itself. In this case, we just print out this message. Now, we can use the extends keyword to have one class inherit from the other. We already know classes inherit from java.lang.Object, but you can also have classes inherit from other classes. And so to demonstrate this, let's have a Manager.java. Notice I create a new file, Manager.java, and at line number 1, public class manager, however, I say extends employee. So this tells us that the manager class is going to pick up everything from the employee class. It'll also pick up everything from the object class, and from that, in this case, we'll have a single constructor at line number 2, and just say system.out print line and show the constructor, basically the default constructor. So in our main.java, to demonstrate this in use, notice at line 32, we create a new instance of employee. So we create a new instance of employee, and at line 33, I print out that employee. Now, notice what comes out for EMP1. We see employee at, and it's got an address. In other words, that's the same format that we saw when we printed previously from java.lang.Object. So the difference here is that, or it's really not a difference, we're picking up that same toString method here on employee. So that's why we can do that. We inherited it. We inherited the toString from the object above us. In a similar manner, notice at line 35 when I create a new manager, very important to observe that when we create a new manager, first the employee constructor runs and then the manager constructor runs. So when you've got this hierarchy, you basically allow the classes above you to initialize first, and then you do whatever initialization you need. And of course, we see here for this particular example, when you create a manager, it first calls the employee constructor, then it calls the manager constructor. And again, I want to stress, notice how manager, the toString, which is implied at line 36, when you print it out as a string, it shows again the name of the class and also the address of where it's at inside the virtual machine. One other subtle comment I'll mention here, notice neither employee nor manager is inside a package. They're actually here at this kind of like the global scope, and typically when you're doing a project, you don't have classes that are not inside some type of package. But for right now, that'll be okay. We see we have an employee and we have a manager. They're not inside any package. It's just the class employee and the class manager.